A billionaire is weeping in mourning at a public square after losing his daughter, whom he had been estranged from. He says to himself, "I never got to tell her I loved her." A poor little girl overhears and approaches him, saying, "She knew you loved her." But what he discovers about her later changes his life forever. The sun was slowly setting over the square, painting the sky in shades of orange. Carter Winslow glanced at his watch, 5:30 p.m., the time when regular executives went home to their families. But he wasn't regular, and he had no family to go back to. Seated on a worn wooden bench, Carter watched people from a distance. Couples holding hands, children laughing, seniors feeding pigeons. Normal life. A life he never had. His $3,000 black suit didn't match the setting, but he didn't care. Nothing seemed important now. His phone still felt heavy in his pocket. The call from 3 hours ago had destroyed whatever sense remained in his life. "Mr. Winslow, I'm sorry to inform you." The social worker's voice echoed in his mind. Elena was dead. His daughter, his only blood relative, was gone, and he didn't even know she had been ill. Carter closed his eyes. 20 years had passed since he last saw Elena. An argument, harsh words, a door slamming. He had been too rigid, too proud. When she announced she was leaving her business degree to study art, he cut off her financial support. "As long as you live under my roof, you'll follow my rules." Words that now sounded hollow and cruel. Elena never returned. Carter never called. Years turned into decades of silence. The executive pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and discreetly dabbed at a tear that insisted on falling. Around him, no one seemed to notice the stern-faced man trying to contain his emotions. To the world, he was just another businessman in a park, maybe waiting for a meeting. No one would guess that the billionaire's heart was shattered. His company was worth billions. His apartment occupied an entire floor of a luxury building in Manhattan. His car collection was worth more than many companies. But at that moment, sitting alone as the evening approached, Carter Winslow had nothing. "If only I could go back," he murmured to himself. "If only—" A dry leaf fell onto his lap, reminding him that time doesn't stop. Autumn was arriving, and so was the end of Elena, perhaps his own end too. What was left now? Who would he leave his fortune to? Who would mourn at his funeral? The questions were suffocating him. Carter took a deep breath. The air felt different, cooler, with a barely perceptible floral scent. He opened his eyes. A small girl stood before him. She couldn't be more than 7 years old. She wore a simple dress, slightly too large, clearly second-hand. Her brown hair was tied in 2 uneven braids, done by inexperienced hands. Her shoes, worn at the toes, told stories of long walks. Carter stared at the girl. She didn't seem intimidated by the serious man in front of her. Her large, dark eyes conveyed a surprising calm. "You're sad," she said. It wasn't a question. Carter tried to harden his expression, to regain his usual mask of coldness, but failed. There was something about that child that lowered his defenses. "I'm fine," he replied in a hoarse voice. "I just need a moment." The girl tilted her head, as if assessing his answer. She didn't seem convinced. "My dad says sometimes we need to cry, even grown-ups," she commented, rocking on her tiptoes. "It's okay." Carter felt a lump form in his throat. Who was this child talking about pain so naturally? He glanced around for her parents, but saw no one paying attention to them. "Where are your parents?" he asked, trying to change the subject. The girl vaguely pointed to the other side of the square. "My dad is working there, taking care of the flowers. He's a gardener." Carter nodded, though he couldn't spot anyone among the distant trees. He must be one of the park's staff. "You shouldn't talk to strangers," he said, more out of habit than real concern. The girl smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "But you're not a stranger. I've seen you here before." Carter frowned. He had never noticed the child. How could he? He rarely noticed the people around him, always focused on business, on numbers, on profits. "My name is Lily," she went on, extending her small hand as if she were an adult introducing herself in a formal meeting. Against his will, Carter found himself shaking her hand. "Carter," he responded curtly. Lily smiled again. When the people we love go away, they still know. The words caught Carter by surprise. It was a strange thing for a child to say, almost as if rehearsed. He felt a chill run through him. "What do you mean by that?" he asked cautiously. Lily shrugged with the typical innocence of a child. "My dad told me that when my mum went to heaven, he said she always knows we love her, even far away." Carter blinked rapidly, trying to process what he was hearing. Was it just a little girl sharing her own loss, or was there something more? The coincidence was unsettling. "She knew you loved her," Lily added softly, fiddling with the hem of her dress. The world stopped. Carter felt as if all the air had been sucked from his lungs. The square, the people, the sounds, everything disappeared. Only Lily's innocent face remained, and those words that seemed directed specifically at him and Elena. "How do you—" he began, but couldn't finish the question. Lily looked confused. "Everyone knows that, right? Parents always love their kids, even when they fight." Carter swallowed hard. Was it just a child saying childlike things, lines she'd heard from adults? Or was there something more? How could she know about Elena? Could it be a mere coincidence? At that moment, a male voice called from afar. "Lily, time to go." The girl looked back and waved to someone Carter couldn't distinguish, then turned to face him again. "I have to go now. You'll be okay." Carter wanted to hold her, to ask thousands of questions, but he was paralyzed by doubt. Was she just a little girl trying to console a sad stranger, or was there a deeper mystery? Lily walked away a few steps, but stopped and turned again. "I come here every day after school," she said with a gentle smile. "If you want to talk." Then she ran off, skipping between the trees already casting shadows in the twilight, her small silhouette fading in the distance like a dream at dawn. Carter remained motionless, his heart pounding, 1,000 thoughts racing in his mind. Lily's words could apply to anyone who'd lost someone. Generic phrases of consolation that children repeat after hearing adults. But the coincidence was too big. How did she appear today of all days, exactly at the moment he was crying for Elena? The square, once a silent refuge for his grief, now felt charged with unanswered questions. And for the first time in decades, Carter Winslow felt something besides sadness and regret. He felt curiosity. He felt a faint thread of hope. Putting the handkerchief back in his pocket, he stood up. Tomorrow he would return. Tomorrow he would find Lily again and try to understand if that strange child knew something about his life, about his loss, or if it was all just a cruel twist of fate. As he walked toward the exit of the square, Carter didn't notice that his step was lighter, that his posture had changed. He didn't realize that, for a brief moment, he had forgotten to pretend to be the hardened man everyone knew. For the first time in a very long while, Carter Winslow had a reason to look forward to tomorrow. Carter arrived at the square earlier the next day. The sky was overcast, threatening rain, but he didn't care. He wore more casual clothes today, dark pants and a grey sweater he rarely used. He sat on the same bench, checking his watch every few minutes. 3 kids ran past, chasing a brightly colored ball. A dog barked in the distance. Carter waited, his anxiety growing by the minute. Maybe she wouldn't come. Maybe he had imagined the strange connection from the day before. The news of Elena's death still weighed like an anchor on his chest. That night, alone in his luxurious apartment, Carter had revisited old memories. Elena as a child, Elena as a teen, Elena leaving home. Her absence now was final, with no chance for reconciliation. A group of pigeons landed near his feet, hoping for crumbs he didn't have. Carter shooed them away with an impatient gesture. "They're just hungry." The childlike voice came from behind him. Carter turned quickly, nearly dropping his phone. Lily was there, the same uneven braids, the same simple dress. She carried a small purple backpack on her back, worn at the edges. "You came back," she said with a smile, as though pleasantly surprised. Carter nodded, trying to hide his relief. "I said I would come back." "No, you didn't," Lily corrected him, sitting beside him without asking. "But I knew you would anyway." Carter frowned, trying to remember if he had indeed mentioned he'd return. He wasn't sure. "How was school today?" he asked. surprised at himself for initiating conversation with a child. Lily swung her legs, which barely reached the ground. It was fun. We learned about plants that eat insects. The teacher showed pictures. Did you know some have traps that look like mouths? Carter gave a slight smile. Carnivorous plants? Yes, I've heard of them. I want one, Lily continued. But my dad said they need special care. He understands plants. He knows all their names. There was pride in her voice when she spoke of her father. Carter felt a pang of envy. Elena never spoke of him like that, not even when she was little. Your dad is a gardener, you said. Lily nodded. He takes care of rich people's gardens. Sometimes he takes me along when I don't have school. I help with the small flowers. Carter looked around, searching for the man. Is he working around here today? No. Lily shook her head. Today he's on the other side of the city, at Mrs. Johnson's garden. She has beautiful yellow roses. So how did you get here? By bus, she replied simply. I know my way around. I'm 7. Carter felt an unexpected concern. A 7-year-old riding the bus alone. Does your dad know you're here? Lily shrugged. Sort of. I said I'd go play after school. She opened her backpack and pulled out a crumpled little notebook. Look, I drew a flower for you. The childish drawing showed a purple flower with irregular petals and a smiling face in the center. In the corner, Lily had written her name in large, uneven letters. So you won't be sad, she explained. Carter held the paper carefully, as if it were a valuable document. No one had given him a present without ulterior motives. In so long he'd almost forgotten how to react. Thank you, he said, his voice husky. Why do you stay here on this bench being sad? Lily asked suddenly. The direct question, in the way only children can ask, caught Carter off guard. He hesitated. How to explain grief and regret to a child? I lost someone. Someone important. Lily nodded slowly, her large eyes fixed on him. I know how that is. My mum went away too. Carter looked at her, surprised not only by her words, but by the maturity with which she spoke them. I'm sorry. It's okay, Lily replied. Dad says she turned into a star. Sometimes I wave to the sky before going to sleep. A cool breeze blew through the square, shaking the leaves in the trees. Carter felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the weather. What was your mom like? He asked, genuinely interested. Lily's face lit up. Beautiful. She used to sing pretty songs to me before bed. And she knew how to braid hair better than Dad. She touched her own crooked braids and laughed. He tries, but it's never the same. Carter smiled too. It was impossible not to be infected by Lily's simple joy. And she made chocolate chip cookies, she went on, the best in the world. What was her name? Carter asked, trying to sound casual, though his heart pounded. Lily fiddled with the notebook's edge before answering. Elena. Dad says it was as pretty as she was. Carter felt the blood freeze in his veins. Elena. The same name as his daughter. Could it be? Or was it just a cruel coincidence? Elena, he repeated, his voice almost failing. It's a beautiful name. Do you know someone named Elena? Lily asked, curious. Carter hesitated. My daughter, the person I lost, was also named Elena. Lily's eyes widened. Like my mum, what's it called when things match like that? Coincidence, Carter answered automatically, his mind racing. Could it really be just coincidence? How many Elenas existed in the world? Thousands, probably. But what if... She left us not long ago, my mom, Lily said quietly, interrupting his thoughts. I still dream about her sometimes. The confession, spoken softly, hit Carter like a punch. That small child carried a pain similar to his, yet faced it with a courage he did not possess. And that name, was it possible that Lily was... No, that was absurd. He would know if Elena had had a daughter. Someone would have told him, right? I also dream about my daughter, Carter found himself saying, the words escaping before he could hold them back. It was the first time he had talked about Elena to anyone in years. Lily did not seem surprised. What was she like? Carter took a deep breath. Images of Elena came to mind. Her first smile, her first day of school, her small hands holding his. Beautiful, he finally said. Stubborn, smart. She had her mother's eyes, but she looked like me and the rest. He paused. At least when she was little, then she grew up, and I wasn't there to see it. You fought? Lily asked bluntly. Carter nodded, swallowing the knot that formed in his throat. I was too hard on her. I wanted her to follow my plans, not hers. Like a little plant you wanted to grow your way, Lily asked. The analogy, so simple, yet so profound, made Carter blink rapidly to keep tears away. Yeah, something like that. Lily took a lollipop out of her pocket and offered it to him. Carter declined with a gesture, and she shrugged before popping it into her own mouth. Dad says plants need room to grow on their own. You can't make a rose into a daisy, even if you really want to. Carter looked at Lily, genuinely impressed. How could a child see so clearly what he once, with all his education and experience, never could? And that name, Elena, kept echoing in his mind. Your dad seems like a wise man, he commented, trying to push away the disturbing idea forming in his head. Lily smiled around her lollipop. He is, but he gets sad too sometimes. He thinks I don't see it. They fell silent for a moment, just watching the birds and the people walking by. Carter felt something strange in his chest, a lightness he hadn't felt in years, but also a profound restlessness. Eleanor. Lily's mother was named Eleanor. Could it be just coincidence? I have to go, Lily announced suddenly, putting the lollipop stick back in her pocket. Dad will be home soon. Carter nodded, feeling a pang of disappointment but also anxiety to be alone and process what he had just discovered. Are you sure you don't want me to take you? I can call my driver. Lily shook her head. No need. I know the way. She got up, adjusting the backpack on her shoulders. Will you come back tomorrow? That simple question was now loaded with new meaning. Carter needed to come back, needed to find out more about Lily, about her mother, Eleanor, about her gardener father. I will, he replied firmly, if you come too. I'll come, Lily promised with a smile. See you tomorrow, Mr. Carter. As he watched her leave, Carter's mind buzzed with possibilities. A child named Lily, whose mother was called Eleanor. An Eleanor who had died recently, just like his daughter. Could it all be a strange coincidence? Or was there something more, something he couldn't see yet? For the first time since hearing about Elena's death, Carter felt not only pain but also a purpose. He needed to discover the truth, no matter what it was. 3 days went by without Lily showing up at the square. Carter returned religiously, always at the same time, sitting on the same bench. The girl's absence bothered him more than he cared to admit. The name Eleanor echoed constantly in his mind. Could it be, or was it just coincidence? His meetings felt more tedious, his financial reports emptier, and conversations with executives more superficial. He couldn't stop thinking about the little girl and the mystery she represented. On the 4th day, a light rain drizzled over the city. Carter held a black umbrella, watching raindrops gather in small puddles on the ground. He was about to give up when he spotted a splash of color approaching. Lily was running through the puddles, wearing only a thin coat with a hood. She had no umbrella. You came even in the rain, she said, stopping in front of him and breathing heavily. Carter stood, extending the umbrella over her as well. You disappeared. I got sick, Lily explained, sniffling a bit. Dad wouldn't let me go out. He said it was the flu. Carter noticed the girl's still flushed cheeks. Maybe you shouldn't be here today either, Lily shrugged. I'm better now. And I wanted to see you. Something warm and unfamiliar stirred in Carter's chest. It was strange how this child's simple words could affect him so deeply. He looked at her face, searching for signs of Elena. Was it in her eyes, her smile? You must be hungry, he commented, noticing it was past lunchtime. Would you like something to eat? Lily's eyes widened. Like at a real restaurant, Carter smiled, a genuine smile that had not appeared on his face in a long time. There's a diner on the corner. Nothing fancy, but the food's good. Can I really go? Lily asked, bouncing excitedly. Of course, Carter replied, surprised at his own enthusiasm. Let's go before the rain gets worse. They walked side by side to the small diner on the corner. It was a simple place, with formica-topped tables and red upholstered stools. A little bell rang when they entered, and a middle-aged waitress greeted them with a weary smile. "Table for two," she asked, eyeing the odd pair, the well-dressed businessman and the little girl in simple clothes, with curiosity. Carter nodded, and they were shown to a table in the corner by the window. Lily climbed onto the stool and immediately picked up the laminated menu, studying it with comical seriousness. "Everything looks so good," she murmured, eyes scanning the colorful pictures. The waitress returned with a notepad. "What can I get you?" "French fries and an orange juice for the girl," Carter ordered, "and I'll have a coffee." "Could I have a milkshake too?" Lily asked timidly. Carter hesitated only for a second. "Sure. A chocolate milkshake." "Chocolate," she replied, eyes gleaming. While they waited for their food, Carter tried to glean more information. "So, your dad's a gardener. Where does he work?" "Lots of places," Lily answered. "He cares for the gardens at fancy houses. Sometimes he spends the whole day planting flowers." She paused. "He's the best gardener in the world. And you help him?" "Yes, I know the names of almost all the flowers. My mum knew them too. She liked to draw the flowers Dad planted." Drawing. Elena liked to draw as well, another detail that made Carter wonder. "Did your mum draw a lot?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Every day," Lily said proudly. "I have lots of her drawings saved. Dad hung some of them in the living room." The waitress returned with the food. Lily's face lit up at the milkshake topped with whipped cream and a cherry. Carter watched, enchanted, as she tasted her first spoonful, closing her eyes in delight. "It's the best milkshake ever," she declared. As they ate, Carter tried to ask more questions without appearing nosy. "Do you live far from here?" "Not too far," Lily answered vaguely, focusing on her French fries. "I can walk, but I have to cross 3 big streets." Carter frowned, concerned. "And your dad lets you walk by yourself?" Lily shrugged. "Sometimes, when he works far away. But I know all the safe paths. I miss my mom every night," Lily continued after a moment, changing the subject with the ease only children possess, especially at bedtime. "Dad tries to sing me the same song she used to sing, but his voice is different." "He sings to you?" Carter asked, imagining the man he had never seen. Lily nodded. "He thinks I'm already asleep, but sometimes I stay awake just to listen. He sings quietly so he doesn't wake me, but also to hide that he's crying." She paused. "I pretend I don't know." Carter felt a lump in his throat. The image of this unknown father, singing to disguise his tears, stirred something deep within him. Who was this man? Someone Eleanor had loved. Someone she had chosen over the life Carter had planned. "Do you have a garden at home?" he asked, trying to push aside these questions to which he had no answers yet. Lily's face brightened. "Yes, it's small, but full of flowers. Dad teaches me the names of them all. We have roses, daisies, sunflowers, and some purple ones whose name I don't remember." "Violets?" Carter suggested. "Yes, violets. They're my favorite." Lily sipped more of her milkshake. "I wish we had more books about flowers. There are only 2 in my school library, and I've read them so many times I've memorized them." "Do you like studying?" Carter asked, noticing how she spoke so enthusiastically about books. "A lot. I want to learn everything," she answered seriously. "But sometimes it's hard. My notebook ran out last week, and Dad said he can only buy another when he gets paid." Carter felt a painful twinge. If Lily really was his granddaughter, if she was Elena's child, how had he allowed her to live like that, with difficulty buying a simple notebook? "What's your favorite subject?" he asked, pushing aside his guilty thoughts. "Science and art," Lily replied promptly. "In science we learn how things work. In art, we can do everything the way we imagine." Carter thought of Elena. She too had loved art from a young age. He never understood or valued that passion. Yet another thing in common between Elena and Lily's mother. "My daughter loved art too," he commented softly. Lily paused and looked at him intently. "Your Elena drew like my mum." Your Elena. The way Lily said it touched something deep inside Carter. "Yes," he replied, remembering. surprised at himself. Landscapes, mostly. Mountains, lakes, forests. Places we'd never been, but that she imagined. Maybe they're drawing together now in heaven, Lily suggested with the disarming sincerity of children. Carter didn't answer. He wouldn't know what to say. They finished the meal in comfortable silence. Carter paid the bill, leaving a generous tip that made the waitress smile. When they left, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still grey. "Thank you for the milkshake," Lily said, bouncing on her heels. "It was the best day." "You're welcome," Carter replied, surprised at how easily the girl found joy in small things. "Can I take you home? It's getting late." Lily shook her head. "No need. I live near here." Carter frowned in concern. "Are you sure? It's not safe for someone your age to walk alone." "I do it every day," she replied with a confident smile. "I know all the ways." Before Carter could insist, Lily came closer and, unexpectedly, hugged him. It was brief, just her small arms around his waist for a second, but enough to leave him breathless. "Bye, Mr. Carter. See you tomorrow." And then she ran, her light step splashing through puddles, her colorful coat disappearing among hurried passers-by. Carter stood there, watching until he could no longer see her in the crowd. A strange feeling overcame him. Worry mixed with an urgent need to know, what if Lily really was Elena's daughter? What if that gardener was the man for whom his daughter had given up everything? Without thinking much, Carter started following Lily's path. He kept a distance, stopping occasionally so as not to be noticed. He saw when she waved to a newspaper vendor, when she stopped to pet a dog tied to a postie, when she carefully hopped over a particularly large puddle. After 10 minutes, Lily turned onto a quieter residential street. The houses were modest, some in need of new paint, but all had small, well-kept gardens. Carter slowed his pace, suddenly feeling like an intruder. Lily stopped in front of a small house in the middle of the block. The blue paint was chipping in places, but the front yard was a symphony of color, just as she'd described. The girl opened the low gate and ran to the door. Before going in, she looked back once, as if she knew someone was watching. Carter hid behind a tree, his heart racing. What was he doing? Why was he following a child like a stalker? But he had to know. He needed to see the man raising this extraordinary girl, who might have loved his daughter, who might be the father of his granddaughter. The house door opened. Carter saw only the silhouette of a tall, thin man who crouched to hug Lily. The girl jumped into his arms, obviously telling him something excitedly, probably about the milkshake and fries. Then the door closed, and Carter was left alone on the sidewalk, feeling strangely hollow and full at the same time. Something was changing inside him, something he didn't fully understand. The questions multiplied. Did that man know Elena? Love Elena? Was Lily truly his granddaughter? He turned to leave, deciding he'd come back the next day. Not as a spy this time, but to meet the man raising that extraordinary child, the man behind the girl who, without knowing it, might be the link Carter never knew existed. The blue house with the colorful garden stayed in Carter's mind all night. He barely slept, tossing in the bed of his luxurious apartment while thinking about Lily, about her mother named Elena, and the mysterious man who was raising her. The next morning, Carter cancelled all his meetings. For the first time in years, business could wait. Something more important occupied his thoughts. He dressed casually, jeans and a simple shirt, clothes he rarely wore. He didn't want to draw attention in that modest neighborhood. Around noon, he gathered the courage and drove to the blue house. He parked in front, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. The garden looked even more impressive up close. Roses, daisies, sunflowers, and yes, violets, carefully arranged in patterns that turned the small space into a living canvas. Before he could knock on the door, Carter heard laughter coming from behind the house. He followed the sound, walking around the narrow stone pathway. A tall, thin man emerged into the backyard. Seen up close, he was younger than Carter had initially thought. Perhaps in his early 30s, he had short brown hair and a lean build, wearing a work apron smudged with dirt. His face, even from a distance, radiated a serenity that contrasted with the signs of tiredness under his eyes. There was something familiar about that man. Carter couldn't explain it, but he felt an instant sense of recognition, as if he were seeing someone he should know. His heart raced. The gardener knelt by a flower bed and began to work with precise, careful movements. The way he stood, tilting his head slightly to one side as he examined each plant, everything felt vaguely familiar to Carter. Lily appeared at the door, carrying a glass of water. She handed it to her father, who smiled at her and said something that made the girl laugh. Carter watched this simple scene with a tightness in his chest. This was what a family should look like. When the gardener turned his face toward the afternoon light, Carter caught a clearer look at his features. To note, he didn't actually know him, but there was something about his eyes, something reminiscent of Elena. Driven by growing unease, Carter decided he would return the next day, not to lurk, but to speak face to face. He needed to meet this man, needed to find out the truth about Lily. The next morning, Carter rehearsed what he would say dozens of times. How could he explain his presence? How could he ask about Elena without sounding crazy? Every phrase seemed inadequate, insufficient. Around noon, he gathered his courage and drove again to the Blue House. He parked out front, breathed deeply, and walked to the door. The garden looked even lovelier under the midday sun. Roses, daisies, sunflowers, and yes, violets, all meticulously arranged into patterns that made the small yard come alive. Before he could knock, Carter heard laughter from the backyard. He followed the sound, turning the corner around the house on a narrow stone path. In the backyard, he found Lily crouched beside a small flower bed. She wore oversized gardening gloves that looked comical on her tiny hands. She was laughing as she tried to pull out some weeds. "Look, I pulled the whole root this time," she exclaimed to someone Carter couldn't see. "Good job, Lil," came a deep, gentle male voice. "You're getting better than me." Carter took another step, and the wood planks of the small deck creaked under his weight. Lily turned, and her eyes went wide. "Mr. Carter," the gardener appeared then, coming from behind a flowering shrub. Up close, he looked even younger than Carter had thought. He might be 30. His eyes were a deep brown, tired yet kind. Traces of dirt smudged his hands and a face bronzed by the sun. "Who are you?" the man asked, in a firm but not hostile tone. Instinctively, he placed himself between Carter and Lily. "Dad, this is Mr. Carter, the friend I told you about," Lily explained, running to stand beside her father. "He bought me a milkshake yesterday." The man's face relaxed slightly, but his eyes stayed wary. "Daniel Alvarez," he introduced himself, extending a dirt-stained hand without hesitation. Carter shook it, feeling calluses hardened by years of manual work. Carter Winslow. Something changed in Daniel's expression. Recognition, followed by a shadow of hurt, surprise. Carter couldn't decipher it. "Winslow," Daniel repeated, as though testing the sound of the name. "Lily told me about you. The man in the park." "Yes," Carter replied. Uncomfortable. How could he explain his being there? "I was passing by and recognized the garden Lily described. Thought I'd say hello." It was a weak lie, and Carter was certain Daniel didn't believe it. But the young man only nodded. "Lily talks about you a lot," Daniel remarked. "Would you like to come in? I can offer you some coffee." The unexpected cordiality caught Carter off guard. "Thank you. That would be nice." Lily ran ahead, excited. "I'll show Mr. Carter my drawings." Inside, the house was as modest as it appeared on the outside, yet impeccably clean and organized. Simple furniture, some clearly second-hand but well cared for. One wall was lined with shelves of books, gardening, art, biographies. It felt like a home of people who valued knowledge, even on a small budget. "Have a seat," Daniel offered, gesturing to the sofa. "I'll make some coffee." While Daniel headed to the small adjoining kitchen, Carter surveyed the living room. Children's drawings were everywhere. On the walls, pinned to the fridge, piled on a side table. Most were clearly Lily's work, but some looked like adult creations. Delicate landscapes, detailed flowers, Precise lines that Carter recognized anywhere. Elena's style. His heart pounded. She had been here. She had lived here. Lily returned carrying a shoebox. "Look, these are my favorite drawings," she said, sitting beside Carter. She started showing him colorful sheets, describing each with excitement. "This is our cat, named Spotty. This is the park we go to on Sundays. This is Dad working in Mrs. Johnson's garden." Carter looked at each drawing, his attention divided. His gaze kept drifting to the other framed pictures on the wall, Elena's pieces. He was now sure. That's when he saw it. On the opposite wall, in a simple wooden frame, hung a black and white photo. A young woman seated on a garden bench, holding a baby in her arms. She was smiling, her face lit in a way Carter hadn't seen in decades. Elena, his Elena, holding a child, Lily, in her arms. Carter felt the air drain from his lungs. The room seemed to spin. Daniel returned with 2 cups of coffee and a glass of juice for Lily. He followed Carter's gaze to the photo and stopped. His expression shut down. "That's her, isn't it?" Carter asked, his voice almost failing. "That's Elena." Daniel set the cups down carefully. He glanced at Lily, still engrossed in her drawings, thankfully unaware of the tension. "Lily," Daniel said gently, "could you go finish your homework in your room? I need to talk with Mr. Carter." The girl made a disappointed face. "But I want to show more drawings." "Later," Daniel promised. "Please, sweetheart." Sighing dramatically in the way only children can, Lily gathered her drawings and left the living room. Daniel waited to hear her bedroom door close before turning to Carter. "You're her father," he stated. It wasn't a question. Carter nodded, unable to speak. His eyes burned with unshed tears. "I met Elena 10 years ago," Daniel began, sitting in the armchair across from him. "I worked as a gardener at the university where she studied art. We fell in love." He paused. "She told me about you, about the argument, about how you disowned her when she decided to follow her own path." The words hit Carter like physical blows, each one true, each one painful. "Lily," Carter started, but his voice failed. "Lily is Elena's daughter," Daniel confirmed. "Your granddaughter." Granddaughter. The word echoed in Carter's mind like a bell. He had a granddaughter. The girl he'd encountered in the park, the child who had touched him so deeply, was Elena's daughter. His blood. His family. "Why didn't she ever tell me?" Carter asked, voice quivering. Daniel took a sip of coffee before answering. "She tried. At the start of the pregnancy, Elena went to your office. You refused to see her. Had your staff tell her you would only meet with her if she came to her senses and followed the path you'd planned?" Carter shut his eyes, remembering. It was true. He'd done that, blinded by pride, anger, frustration at watching his carefully laid plans crumble. "After that, she decided to move on without you," Daniel went on. "We got married when Lily was 1. I adopted her officially, but we never hid who her biological father was, or rather, that it wasn't me." "Who?" Carter began to ask. "A boyfriend from college. He didn't stick around when he found out she was pregnant. It doesn't matter now." Carter looked again at the photo. Elena looked so happy, so at peace, so different from the hurt and defiant young woman who had stormed out of his mansion 20 years earlier. "When did she die?" he asked, the pain fresh in his voice. 6 months ago. Cancer. It was quick, at least." Daniel swallowed hard, and Carter realized he, too, was fighting tears. "She never spoke badly of you to Lily, you know. She always said you were a good man, just hurt inside, that maybe one day you'd meet." Carter couldn't hold back his tears anymore. They flowed silently down his face. "Was it coincidence?" he finally asked. "Lily in the square, exactly when I found out about Elena's death?" Daniel shook his head. "Not exactly. Elena left a letter for you. I asked the social worker to inform you of her death, and, well, I know you used to visit that square. Elena watched you from a distance sometimes, you know? She never had the courage to approach you, but she wanted to be sure you were okay." He paused. "When she died, I started taking Lily to that same square. I thought maybe Maybe someday you'd meet. So Lily knew who I was? No. She only knew her grandfather spent time there, but she didn't know it was you specifically. I wanted it to happen, naturally, if it ever did. Carter dried his tears, both ashamed and moved at the same time. All these years, I missed all these years. Daniel nodded, his expression now gentler. Yes, you did, but Lily is here, she's 7, there's still time. For the first time, Carter really looked at Daniel, not just a gardener, not just the man raising his granddaughter, but the person Elena had chosen, the man she had loved when Carter rejected her. And Carter did not see resentment in his eyes, only a deep sadness and a calm acceptance. I'm sorry, Carter said, the words pitifully inadequate to express the depth of his remorse. I was a proud fool. I lost my daughter because of that, and I almost lost the chance to know my granddaughter. Daniel sighed. It wasn't easy, you know. When Elena left, she had nothing. We had to build from scratch. There were tough times, late bills, choosing between medicine and food, but there was never a lack of love. Each word was like a needle in Carter's heart. All his money, his entire empire, and he hadn't provided for his daughter and granddaughter's basic needs when they needed it. Was she happy? He asked, dreading the answer. A genuine smile lit Daniel's tired face. Very. Elena lived life on her own terms. She painted, she loved, she raised our daughter. She never regretted her choices. Carter looked at the closed door of the room where Lily was. What happens now? Daniel shrugged. That's up to you. I can tell Lily who you are, if you want to be part of her life. Or you can just keep being the friend from the square. The choice is yours. The offer, so simple yet so complex, left Carter speechless. This man, who had every right to hate him, was offering him a second chance. I want to know my granddaughter, Carter finally replied. If you'll allow it. Daniel nodded. Elena would have liked that. He stood. But take it slow. Lily lost her mom recently. She's strong, but she's still adjusting. Carter got to his feet, feeling unsteady in his own skin. Thank you, he said, the word feeling small compared to what was being offered. I'm not doing this for you, Daniel answered honestly. I'm doing it for Elena. And for Lily. As Carter prepared to leave, Lily appeared in the doorway, peering at the two men curiously. Are you leaving already, Mr. Carter? She asked, disappointed. Carter exchanged a look with Daniel, who nodded softly. I am, but I'll come back tomorrow if your dad allows, Carter replied, his voice more certain now. Of course he will, Lily exclaimed, jumping with joy. We can plant flowers together? Carter felt a smile forming on his lips, one that came from somewhere deep and forgotten. I'd love that. As he left, his throat tight and his heart lighter than it had been in 20 years, Carter glanced at the clear sky. He whispered a silent thank you to Elena, wherever she might be. He had lost his daughter, but his granddaughter was here, an unexpected miracle, a second chance he didn't deserve but was determined to honor. Carter entered his mansion like a ghost. The day's revelation left him exhausted, drained yet unable to rest. He waved the butler away absent-mindedly. He wanted to be alone. The house had never felt so large, so empty. The bright hallways, expensive furniture, valuable paintings, everything seemed meaningless now. What did riches matter when you lose a daughter, when you discover a granddaughter you never knew? The image of the photograph in Daniel's home wouldn't leave his mind. Elena smiling, holding a tiny Lily. That smile, the same one from her teenage years, before the fights, before their relationship deteriorated. A smile he hadn't seen in her final years. Carter poured himself a whiskey, no ice. The amber liquid burned his throat, but didn't lessen the weight on his chest. He clutched the glass tightly as though drawing some comfort from its cool solidity. I had a granddaughter, he murmured to the silent room. A granddaughter I didn't know. He climbed the stairs slowly, his heavy steps echoing through the house. On the second floor, he hesitated. To the right was his own bedroom. To the left, the room that had belonged to Elena. For 2 decades, he had left that room untouched. Not out of sentiment, he told himself over the years, but because he had no need of the extra space. Now he recognized the lie he'd told himself. He was unable to change that room because it was his last tangible connection to Elena, the last proof she had once been part of his life. Carter opened the door carefully. The air was musty, despite the housekeeper's regular attempts to clean. Moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the outlines of a room that once belonged to a teenage girl, a bookshelf stocked with art books, a desk where she would draw for hours, a bed with a lavender bedspread, her favorite color, posters of bands on the walls, an old doll on the dresser, the one Elena insisted on keeping even when she was too old for toys. Carter touched each item as though they were sacred relics. His fingers found a framed photo on the bedside table, Elena at 15, smiling next to him in a rare moment of harmony during a beach trip. "How could I have been such an idiot?" he asked the photo. His voice choked. "How could I lose you because of my pride?" Memories flooded his mind. Elena's 5th birthday, when she blew out the candles so hard that wax splattered all over the table. The day she came home from school crying because a classmate criticized her drawing, and he, awkward with emotions, only told her she needed to learn to be strong. The first argument about college, when she mentioned she might not want to major in business. The nights he came home late, finding her notes asking him to watch a movie with her. Invites he rarely accepted, always too busy. And then the final fight. The harsh words he hurled at her, accusing her of being ungrateful, wasting opportunities, disappointing the family. Her look, one not of anger but of profound sadness, as though she finally understood she could never be the daughter he wanted. "You were right," Carter said to the silence. "You always were." The weight of regret finally broke through the barriers he had kept in place for decades. Carter fell to his knees beside the bed, still clutching the photo. And for the first time since his wife's death 25 years ago, he allowed himself to cry without restraint. Deep sobs shook his body as years of repressed emotions poured out. He wept for the daughter he lost, for the years he'd never get back, for the granddaughter he hadn't seen grow up. He cried for the man he had chosen to be, cold, unyielding, blind to anything beyond his own expectations. "Forgive me," he pleaded between tears. "Eleanor, forgive me." Dawn found him still sitting on the floor of her room, leaning against the bed, eyes swollen, utterly spent. But something had changed. Somewhere between the tears and the memories, a resolution had been born. He could not undo the past. He could not bring Elena back. But Lily was there, alive, radiant, a second chance he didn't deserve, but one he was determined to seize. Carter rose with difficulty, his knees aching from hours on the hard floor. He took one last look at the room bathed in morning light. "I'll do it differently this time," he promised. "I'll be different." In the quiet of the house, those words sounded like a solemn vow, the first step in a journey that was only beginning. The next morning, after his night of tears and reflection, Carter awoke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. As he drank his coffee, he began mentally listing what he needed to buy. He didn't exactly know what a 7-year-old girl would want, but he was determined to find out. He dismissed his driver and drove himself to the shopping center. He walked awkwardly through bright toy stores, feeling entirely out of place. A sales assistant approached him, smiling at his bewildered expression. "May I help you, sir? I'm looking for gifts for my granddaughter. She's 7 now," Carter said, the word granddaughter still sounding strange to his ears. The sales assistant led him through the aisles, and Carter found himself choosing children's books about flowers and nature, recalling Lily's interests. He also selected educational games, a watercolor painting kit, and a small gardening set, complete with little pots, seeds, and brightly colored tools. When he left the store, he was carrying more bags than he'd planned. He also stopped at a bookstore, buying illustrated gardening books. On the way to the car, he spotted a stationery shop and went in impulsively. He came out with new notebooks, colored pencils, markers, and a purple backpack, Lily's favorite color as far as he could tell. Daniel answered the door, surprise on his face when he saw Carter carrying so many bags. "I brought some things for Lily," Carter explained, suddenly self-conscious. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. "She's in the backyard." Carter entered, sensing a slight tension in the air. It was understandable. Daniel was still adjusting to the idea of sharing Lily with the man who'd abandoned Elena. "Grandpa Carter!" Lily shouted when she saw him come into the backyard. She ran toward him but stopped when she noticed the bags. "What's all that?" "Presents," Carter replied, putting the bags down. "I thought you might like a few new things." Lily's eyes widened as she dug through the bags, letting out cries of delight at the books and toys. When she found the gardening kit, she squealed with excitement. "Look, Dad, I have my own little pots now." Daniel smiled, watching from a distance. "That's very kind, Carter." "It's the least I can do," Carter said softly. Then to Lily, "Do you want to plant something today?" Lily nodded eagerly. "Let's plant violets. They're my favorite." "Sure," Carter agreed. "Your dad can help us find the right seeds." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I have some in the shed. I'll get them." For the next few hours, Carter found himself sitting on the grass in the backyard, learning to fill small flower pots under Lily's enthusiastic direction, with occasional tips from Daniel. His hands, accustomed to signing contracts and using electronics, were now dirty with soil. And he didn't mind one bit. "Not like that, Grandpa," Lily giggled, adjusting the seeds Carter had placed too close together. "They need space to grow." "Sorry," Carter grinned. "I guess I don't have your skill at this." "Dad says nobody's born knowing everything," Lily answered seriously. "You only learn by trying." Carter looked over at Daniel, who was watering some pots nearby. The young man smiled faintly, and Carter realized he was witnessing the wisdom Daniel shared with Lily every day. When Lily told a funny story about a snail she'd found in the school garden, Carter laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh that surprised even him. How long had it been since he laughed like that? Years, probably, maybe decades. Daniel watched the scene quietly, surprise evident on his face. Seeing the powerful executive sitting on the grass, laughing at a child's tale, must have seemed surreal. Carter realized Daniel was witnessing a side of him that few, if anyone, had seen in recent years. The following week, Carter scheduled a meeting with the principal of Arlington Academy, one of the best elementary schools in the city. The man, clearly flattered to receive the famous businessman in his office, listened intently as Carter explained the situation. "I want to enroll my granddaughter and set up a fund to ensure her education through college." The arrangements were made quickly. The Winslow name opened many doors. Carter established a generous educational fund that would guarantee Lily the best schooling for at least the next 15 years. When he presented the idea to Daniel, he expected resistance. To his surprise, Daniel only asked, "Have you talked to Lily about it? Changing schools is a big decision." Carter admitted he had not. "I thought, well, I figured you'd decide." Daniel shook his head. "In our house, Lily helps decide things that affect her life. Elena and I always did it that way." The implicit lesson did not go unnoticed. Carter learned more about parenting in that moment than he had in all the years raising Eleanor. When they spoke to Lily about the new school, she was excited by the advanced art classes and the large library, but worried about leaving her friends. In the end, she decided she wanted to try, especially once she learned she could still see her old friends on weekends. The first parent-teacher meeting at Arlington Academy made Carter more nervous than any business meeting he'd had. Sitting in a child-sized chair next to Daniel, he listened as Lily's teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, praised the girl's quick adjustment and her exceptional creativity. "Lily has a natural talent for self-expression," Mrs. Reynolds commented, showing some of Lily's recent work. "This piece here is particularly moving." Carter took the drawing she handed over and felt his heart freeze. Lily had drawn 3 people, herself, Daniel, and Carter, all holding hands. Above them, floating among clouds and surrounded by hearts, was a woman with long brown hair. Eleanor, clearly. A large red heart enclosed them all. "She calls it my complete family," Mrs. Reynolds explained. "Lily told me her mother is in heaven, but now she's met her grandfather she didn't know, so everyone is happy together." Carter swallowed, unable to speak. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture of empathy that spoke more than words ever could. On Lily's official first day at her new school, Carter insisted on being there. Daniel allowed him to pick her up alone, a sign of trust Carter did not take lightly. He parked in front of the imposing red brick building, feeling a mixture of anxiety and excitement. When the bell rang, children poured out in groups. He looked for Lily's navy blue uniform and the purple backpack she now carried. Suddenly, she appeared at the gate, chatting animatedly with another girl. Upon seeing Carter, her eyes lit up and she dashed toward him, backpack bouncing, braids flying with each step. "Grandpa," she called, throwing herself into his arms. Carter hugged her, feeling an indescribable warmth in his chest. Her broad, sincere grin, the gap from her missing front tooth, would be forever etched in his memory. "How was your day?" he asked, helping her into the car. Lily chattered non-stop the whole ride, stories about her new friend Zoe, who had a cat just like Spotty, about Mrs. Palmer, the science teacher, who spoke so softly that everyone had to be absolutely silent to hear her, and about the huge library where she found a fascinating book about a girl living in a cabin and growing her own garden. "Can I have my own garden too, Grandpa?" she asked. "It's not as big as the one in the book, but with my favorite flowers." "Of course," Carter replied, smiling. "We can start this weekend if your dad agrees." Before heading home, Carter suggested a little detour. "How about some ice cream to celebrate your first day?" Lily's eyes sparkled. "Really?" They stopped at a traditional ice cream parlor with dozens of flavors displayed behind a glass counter. Lily pressed her nose to the glass, studying each option with comic seriousness. "Strawberry," she decided at last, "with chocolate topping." Carter ordered the same, although he rarely ate sweets. He watched, fascinated, as Lily smiled at the server and thanked him with a cheerful "thank you very much" when handed her cone. The natural kindness and courtesy with which she treated people impressed him. "Who taught you to be so polite?" he asked, as they sat at a small round table. Lily looked at him, confused. "What do you mean? You always say please and thank you. You smile at people. Did someone teach you that?" She shrugged, licking the ice cream that was starting to melt. "I don't know. Dad and Mom were always like that to everyone. I guess I learned by watching." Carter thought about this in silence. Elena had found a man who taught values not by preaching, but through daily acts. And together, they had raised a child who naturally reflected those qualities. How much had he missed by not being there from the start? How many precious moments of growth, discovery, first words? Remorse swept over him again, but this time accompanied by gratitude. Gratitude that he still had the chance to be part of Lily's life. Back at Daniel's house, Carter offered to help Lily with her homework. They sat at the kitchen table while Daniel made dinner, the aroma of fresh seasonings filling the room. "I have to do these multiplication problems," Lily explained, showing him a worksheet. "Some of them are hard." "Let's see if I can help," Carter offered, pulling his chair closer. He explained patiently, using practical examples. How many flowers would be in 5 planters if each had 6 blooms? How many total petals if each flower had 4 petals? Lily grasped the concept quickly, her eyes lighting up when she understood. "You're better than the teacher," she exclaimed in the uninhibited way children do. "She never explained with flowers." Carter laughed, genuinely touched by the compliment. "I just used examples you like." "That makes learning easier." Danielis, who was quietly observing as he chopped vegetables, smiled at the scene. Briefly, the two men's eyes met. A silent understanding passed between them. Both wanted the best for Lily. Both were learning how to share that responsibility in her life. While helping Lily with the last few problems, Carter felt a profound change within himself. It wasn't just the joy of being with his granddaughter, nor the relief of her acceptance. It was something more fundamental, like parts of his being, long buried under decades of ambition and isolation, were finally awakening. The simplicity of that late afternoon, helping with homework, listening to school stories, smelling homemade food, brought a sense of fulfillment his entire financial empire had never provided. In that modest kitchen, Carter Winslow was, at last, learning how to plant new roots. The afternoon sun lit the peaceful neighborhood as Carter parked in front of the house. Over the past few days, he'd grown used to making the drive, and what used to feel like a world away from him now felt reassuring in its simplicity. As he approached, he noticed Daniel's truck wasn't there. He climbed the 3 front steps and immediately saw Lily on the porch, hunched over several sheets of paper scattered on the wooden floor, coloring with crayons. She was so focused she didn't even notice him arrive. Carter watched in silence for a moment. She bit her lower lip while coloring, exactly like Eleanor used to do. The same gesture, the same intensity. These tiny details still startled him, fragments of his daughter surviving in Lily. "Hello?" he finally said. Lily looked up. Her face lit up instantly. "Grandpa!" She jumped up and ran over to him, naturally taking his hand in hers. That simple gesture still caught him by surprise. The touch, the trust, the genuine joy at seeing him. "Dad had to work at Mrs. Williams' garden today," she explained. "Our neighbor's looking after me, but she said I could stay here on the porch and draw." Carter nodded, glancing toward the house next door, where an older woman was indeed watching from the window. She waved at him, and he waved back. "Want to see what I drew today?" Lily asked, tugging his hand excitedly. "I'd love to," Carter answered, letting her guide him to where the papers were spread out. He sat on the porch step, his knees protesting. Lily knelt beside him and began to show off her drawings with pride. There were many: colorful gardens, trees with fruit bigger than the trunks, flowers with smiling faces. But one stood out: 3 people holding hands, in front of a house with a large garden. "Is that us?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, smiling. "It's our garden, where everything got pretty again." Carter swallowed, lightly touching the drawing. The 3 figures, a small one with braids, a taller one with an apron, and another with grey hair and what looked like a tie, were surrounded by flowers of every color. "It's beautiful, Lily," he told her sincerely. "I'm going to hang it in my room, next to the one of Mom up in heaven," she explained, "so our whole family can be together on the wall." The ease with which Lily included him in her family, the natural way she spoke of Elena, how she calmly accepted both loss and new beginnings, this left Carter speechless. "Dad says drawings keep the people we love," Lily went on, organizing her crayons by color. "Even if they're not around." "Your dad is a wise man," Carter observed. "He's been working a lot," Lily said, shifting subjects with childlike fluidity. "Lots of houses to take care of. He comes home tired." Carter noticed something in her tone. "Does that worry you?" Lily shrugged, apparently absorbed in lining up her crayons. "Sometimes he works even when he's sick." "Last week he had a cough but still went to work," Carter frowned. "Why wouldn't he take a day off?" "Because we need the money," she answered, as if it were obvious. "If he doesn't work, he doesn't get paid. Then we can't buy food." The matter-of-fact answer hit Carter hard. This was the reality for most people, yet so far from his own that it seemed surreal. "Do you ever run out of food?" he asked cautiously. Lily kept arranging her drawings. "Not much, only sometimes at the end of the month. Dad always eats less, so I can eat more." She paused. "Last week, the milk ran out 3 days before payday. Dad says we're rich in love. But sometimes I wish we had a little more milk," she added simply. Carter felt such a sharp stab in his chest that he had to take a deep breath to hide it. It wasn't pity he felt. It was a complicated mix of admiration and shame. Admiration for Daniel, who'd raised such an extraordinary daughter on so little, silently going hungry so that she had enough. And shame in himself, the billionaire who hadn't realized something so basic. He'd paid for Lily's new school, bought books and toys, set up an education fund, but he hadn't thought about their daily needs, like ensuring there was milk in the fridge. "But now it's better," Lily continued cheerfully, oblivious to the effect of her words. "At my new school, there's lunch every day. Sometimes I save a piece of fruit in my backpack to bring home for Dad." Carter stared at her, stunned. This 7-year-old child worried about saving food for her father, while he, with his billions, had never thought about something so basic. He had enrolled Lily in an expensive school, bought her books and toys, created a college fund, but never considered their immediate, day-to-day necessities. "Lily," he said after a moment, "what do you and your dad usually do on Saturdays?" "We take care of the garden," she answered promptly. "Sometimes we go to the park, because it's free. In winter, we stay home reading or drawing. Every word was a lesson for Carter. The small gestures he had made until then felt suddenly insufficient, almost superficial. To truly love wasn't about lavish gifts or education funds. It was about presence, action, commitment. It was about ensuring there was always milk in the fridge, that Daniel didn't have to work when he was ill. As Lily went back to drawing, humming to herself, Carter felt something shift inside. For the first time in his life, he wanted to care for someone, not as a businessman solving problems with money, but as a grandfather genuinely concerned about his family's everyday well-being. The feeling was new, almost frightening in its intensity, yet profoundly true. The small miracles weren't the grand gestures he could accomplish with his fortune. They were here on this simple porch, with a little girl who drew pictures of her grandfather holding her hand. They were in finally seeing what truly mattered. Lily's comment about sometimes not having milk lingered in Carter's mind. During important meetings, while signing documents, in the rare hours he managed to sleep, the image of his granddaughter, longing for something as simple as a glass of milk, haunted him. One Tuesday morning, Carter cancelled all his appointments for the day. His assistant, accustomed to his unwavering work ethic, was surprised but didn't protest. This was the third time in 2 weeks Carter had rearranged his schedule for personal matters, unheard of in his 30 years running the company. Driving out toward the suburbs, Carter noted how the neighborhoods changed gradually, from luxury condos to middle-class areas, and then to simpler, humbler places, though still dignified. He parked outside a small real estate office, the kind that didn't advertise in fancy magazines or boast a sophisticated website. "I'm looking for a house," he told the realtor, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile. "Something family-friendly, welcoming, with a nice backyard and maybe some low trees, possibly near a park." The realtor showed him several options throughout the day. Carter rejected those that were too large, too modern, or located in gated communities. He wanted a place that felt like a home, not an investment. At the fourth house, he knew immediately. It was a 2-story brick home with large windows. The backyard had an old oak tree, perfect for a swing, and plenty of space for a big garden. The white fence needed a fresh coat of paint, and a few roof shingles needed replacing, but nothing major. Inside, the living room had a stone fireplace. The kitchen was spacious, with a big central table, perfect for family dinners, homework, scattered drawings. Upstairs were 3 cozy bedrooms and a small office. The master bedroom had a window overlooking the garden. As he walked through the rooms, Carter didn't just see the house. He saw possibilities. He saw Lily running around the backyard, Daniel tending an expansive garden, dinners at the kitchen table where no one had to eat less so another could have enough. He saw a place where his granddaughter could grow safely, with stability and never again worry about the end of the month. "I'll take it," he said to the realtor, who seemed surprised by his quick decision. "I want to finalize the purchase as soon as possible, and I need total discretion." 3 days later, the house was officially his. Carter hired a crew for minor repairs and improvements, and personally bought a wooden swing set to install on the old oak in the backyard. He oversaw painting the fence, cleaning the garden, replacing the upstairs floors. He chose simple but quality furnishings: a large bed for Daniel, a sturdy wooden desk for Lily's room, bookshelves for gardening texts. A week after that talk on the porch, everything was ready. Carter called Daniel. "I'd like to show you and Lily something tomorrow," he said, trying to sound casual. "I can pick you up after lunch," Daniel agreed, though his voice betrayed curiosity and a hint of caution. Their relationship had improved in recent weeks, but was still marked by Daniel's understandable reserve. The next day, Carter picked them up at the Blue House. Lily was excited about the surprise trip, while Daniel stayed quiet, gazing out the car window with an unreadable expression. When Carter parked in front of the new house, Lily let out a delighted gasp at the swing hanging from the oak. Daniel, on the other hand, frowned. "What's this place?" he asked warily. Carter took a deep breath. "I want to show you two something." Lily was already running toward the swing, but Daniel remained next to the car, arms folded. "Shall we?" Carter invited gently. Together, they walked over to Lily, who was already on the swing, her laughter filling the late afternoon air. Daniel looked around, taking in the house, the freshly landscaped garden, the gleaming white fence. "What is this place, Carter?" he asked again. Carter reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring of keys. He held them out to Daniel. "It's a house. For you." Daniel stared at the keys like they were something dangerous. "What are you talking about?" Carter inhaled slowly. This was harder than he'd imagined. "I bought this house for you and Lily. It's yours now." Daniel's expression hardened. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," Carter replied calmly. "It's what I should have done years ago. I'm trying to fix what I broke." Lily hopped off the swing, panting from all the fun. "What are you talking about?" she asked, looking from one to the other. Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Carter, then at the house. His face revealed a storm of emotions. "Shall we take a look?" Carter suggested, extending a hand to Lily. She grabbed it without hesitation. With the other hand, he offered the keys to Daniel. This time, Daniel took them, albeit after a moment of hesitation. They went inside together. Daniel walked slowly, as though stepping onto unknown land. Lily, by contrast, ran from room to room, exclaiming in surprise, "This bedroom has a huge window, Dad. You can see the stars at night. There's a real fireplace. Can we roast marshmallows in winter? Look how much shelf space for books." Carter followed in silence, letting them explore. When they reached the kitchen, Lily opened the fridge and squealed, "It's full of food. Look how much milk, Dad." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were damp. "Carter, he began, but couldn't finish. "I know it doesn't fix everything," Carter said quietly. "It can't bring Elena back or recover the years I lost, but Lily deserves a place with room to grow. And you deserve to work without worrying about running out of food." Daniel looked at Lily, who was opening and closing kitchen cupboards excitedly, then turned back to Carter. "Why? Because you're my family," Carter answered simply. "The only one I have left." Silence filled the space, broken only by Lily's footsteps as she returned from exploring. "You have to see the backyard," she cried. "There's space for a huge garden. We can plant violets and roses and daisies and—" Daniel smiled at his daughter's excitement. Then, without a word, he pulled her into a tight hug, lifting her off the floor. Lily laughed, hugging her father's neck. "Can we live here, Dad?" she asked when he set her down. "Please." Daniel glanced at Carter. "Thank you," he said simply. The caution was gone from his eyes, only sincere gratitude and, possibly, understanding. Carter nodded, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt he was creating something real, something that would last beyond business, beyond his financial empire, beyond himself. 3 weeks later, the move was complete. Carter had helped organize the logistics, hiring movers to transport Daniel and Lily's belongings from the Blue House to their new home. He watched in fascination as Daniel insisted on transplanting each flower from the old yard, with Lily assisting, so not a single one was left behind. One Sunday afternoon, Carter visited the new house. He found it already transformed, pictures on the walls, books on the shelves, vases of flowers in every room. It now had Daniel and Lily's imprint. Lily greeted him at the door with a tight hug and a piece of paper in her hand. "I made a new drawing for you, Grandpa." It was the first time she'd called him that in front of Daniel. The gardener, who appeared behind her, gave a slight smile. Carter took the drawing, feeling a lump form in his throat. It showed the new house with the same 3 figures from earlier drawings, Lily, Daniel, and himself, holding hands in front of the door. Above, in colorful, uneven letters, were the words, "My family and my grandpa." Carter held the paper gently, as if it were a precious relic. "I'll keep it forever," he promised, voice trembling. Lily beamed and ran inside, likely to fetch more drawings. Carter remained there, staring at the word grandpa, as an emotion he couldn't name welled inside him. "I'll never disappear again," he whispered, more to himself than to Daniel, who was still at the door. "You'll never feel alone again. I promise." The words hung in the air like a solemn vow. Daniel invited him in, offering coffee. While Lily proudly showed off how she'd arranged her new room, the two men conversed in the kitchen, still somewhat formal, but without the tension of their first encounters. "She's happy here," Daniel said, watching Lily through the kitchen door. "She's not anxious about money or food anymore. I can see the difference." Carter nodded, satisfied. "And you?" Daniel gave a small smile. "I'm sleeping better. I quit one of my jobs, the one that was farthest away. That means more time with Lily." Late in the afternoon, with Lily absorbed in a new book in the living room, Daniel approached Carter holding a yellowed envelope. It looked old, its edges worn. "She wrote them, you know, many times. She never mailed them, but she kept them," Daniel said, extending the envelope toward Carter. "I found it yesterday while unpacking. I thought you should read them." Carter looked at the envelope, his heart hammering. "Eleanor," Daniel nodded. "Letters to you. Over the years. From before Lily was born until a few weeks before she passed." With shaking hands, Carter accepted the envelope. Inside were several sheets of paper, some yellowed with age, others more recent. Elena's elegant handwriting, which he'd recognize anywhere, filled each page. Sitting on the living room couch while Lily flipped through her book and Daniel discreetly left the room for privacy, Carter opened the first letter. It was dated 9 years earlier. "Dear Dad," it began. "Today I found out I'm pregnant. My first thought was to call you. Then I remembered you wouldn't take my call. Even so, I wanted you to know you're going to be a grandfather. I hope one day we can meet again, that you can meet your grandson or granddaughter. They say time heals everything. I hope that's true." Tears began rolling down Carter's cheeks before he could control them. He moved to the next letter, dated a few months later. "I'm 6 months along now. It's a girl. I'm going to name her Lily, like the flowers Mom loved. Daniel's wonderful. He'll be a great dad. Sometimes I wonder if you'd like him. I think so, if you gave him a chance. I wish you could meet my daughter. She has your eyes. I'm sure of it. I hope one day you can see her and maybe understand me." Carter pressed the letters to his chest, tears now flowing freely. It was as if Elena were there, finally saying what neither of them had managed to say in life. It was more than forgiveness. It was a bridge between the past and the present, between what was lost and what could still be built. Lily looked up from her book and saw him crying. Without a word, she came over and placed her small hand over his. Carter smiled through his tears, feeling simultaneously broken and whole in a way he'd never felt before. In that moment, in the sunlit living room of the new house, with Eleanor's letters on his lap and Lily's hand on his, Carter finally understood what it meant to have a home. The morning was bright, the sky an infinite blue. Carter drove slowly, unhurried. The bouquet of flowers on the passenger seat, a carefully chosen arrangement of violets, lilies, and white roses, filled the car with a soft fragrance. After reading Elena's letters the night before, Carter knew what he needed to do. It was a step he'd delayed but now felt inevitable, necessary. The cemetery gates loomed ahead, tall and solemn. The attendant at the entrance gave him directions. Carter parked and followed a lane lined with cypress trees. The sound of his footsteps on the dew-damp grass was the only noise besides an occasional bird call. The hush of the place felt almost sacred. He followed the markers to the newer section of the cemetery, walking among the headstones until he found what he was looking for. Eleanor Winslow Alvarez. The dates etched into the polished stone spanned a life so short, just 38 years, such little time to live all she deserved. The headstone was simple but elegant. A small sculpture of an open book with a rose lay at the top. Daniel had chosen well. It perfectly represented Elena's passion for art and nature. Carter stood still for a long moment, just looking. The reality of the loss he had grasped mentally now struck him in a visceral way. This small rectangle of earth contained the remains of the person he had created, loved, hurt, and then lost. His daughter. He slowly knelt on the grass, ignoring the damp that quickly soaked through his pants. He placed the bouquet carefully against the headstone. "Elena," he began, his voice low and husky, "I took so long to come." A breeze whispered among the trees, rustling the flowers. I spent years convincing myself that I was right, that you'd come back once you realized your mistake. Carter swallowed hard. But the only one who was wrong was me. The first rays of morning touched the top of the headstone, making the marble glow faintly. I read your letters yesterday, all of them, and I realized how many times you tried to build a bridge while I kept raising walls. Carter ran his hand over his face, feeling dampness on his cheeks. He hadn't noticed he was already crying. I met Lily. She's amazing, Elena. So clever, so kind, so brave. She reminds me so much of you that it hurts to look at her sometimes. He paused. She has your eyes, your smile, the way you tilt your head when you're curious about something. A small bird landed briefly on the headstone, as if listening, then flew away. Daniel is a good man. A far better man than I ever was. He loved you the way you deserved. He raised Lily with values I never taught you, maybe ones I never even had. Carter adjusted some of the flowers that had shifted in the breeze. She draws just like you did. She has the same passion for color and form. He smiled through his tears. Yesterday she drew a picture of me. She said I look serious, but my eyes smile. Can you imagine that, me, with smiling eyes? The cemetery's stillness seemed to envelop his words, absorbing them. I made so many mistakes, Elena. So many. I valued all the wrong things. I built an empire, but lost my only daughter in the process. Carter closed his eyes for a moment, letting the tears flow again. You were right about art, about following your heart, your paintings. Daniel showed them all to me. They're beautiful, Elena, so full of life and truth. You found your path, even without my support, maybe even in spite of it. With trembling fingers, Carter touched the name carved into the stone. Remember that argument about art school? I said art wouldn't feed anyone. That you were wasting your potential. He shook his head. What a fool I was. Your art fed your soul, and now it's feeding mine too. The drawings you left behind are like windows into your heart, into the wonderful person you became without me. An older couple passed by some distance away, strolling slowly among the headstones with their own flowers. Carter waited for them to move on before continuing. I bought a house for them. Nothing grand, just a safe place with space for Lily to grow, and for Daniel to plant a bigger garden. I should have done that years ago. I should have been there for you both when you needed me. Carter pulled a small paper flower from his pocket, one Lily had made for him. She calls me Grandpa now. The first time I heard it, something inside me broke, a wall maybe, or a chain, I'm not sure. He placed the paper flower beside the real bouquet. I'm learning, Elena. Too late, I know, but I'm trying. Daniel is teaching me patience. Lily is teaching me how to see the beauty in simple things, things I never appreciated. The sun rose higher in the sky, warming his shoulders. Carter had no idea how long he'd been kneeling, but his legs were starting to ache. Still, he didn't move. I'm asking your forgiveness, Elena, for my pride, my inflexibility, for not supporting you when you needed me most, for wasting years we could have shared. His voice cracked, and he paused to regain control. I don't know if there's a place where you can hear me. I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I promise I'll take care of Lily, the way I never took care of you. I'll love her, support her, and never ever demand she be anything other than who she is. Carter shifted, feeling his age in his aching knees. Still, he remained there. And I'll look after Daniel too. He's given me a second chance I don't deserve. He's allowing me to be part of your lives, even after all I've done. A bird sang in a nearby tree, its song bright and pure, as if in response. Thank you, Elena, Carter said, his voice steadier now. Thank you for Lily, for giving me a second chance through her, for all the letters you wrote, even when you knew I might never read them, for never letting bitterness extinguish your love. He laid his hand on the headstone one last time, tracing the letters of her name. I love you, my daughter. I always did, even when I didn't show it. I hope wherever you are, you can forgive me. Carter stood slowly. He lingered a few more minutes in silence, letting the sun, the wind, and Elena's presence surround him. Then he turned and walked back along the lane of cypress trees. His steps felt different, lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Not entirely gone, for remorse and longing would remain forever, but eased enough that he could breathe again, enough that he could return to Lily and Daniel and be the man they deserved. He had asked for forgiveness. The rest would depend on time and on the daily, ordinary acts through which he would honor Elena's memory and Lily's future. Spring arrived in an explosion of color and fragrance. The garden of the new house, once just Daniel's carefully plotted project, now blossomed in all its glory. Neat flower beds showed off tulips, daffodils, and of course Lily's favorite violets. The hedge of lavender framed the yard, drawing in bees and butterflies that danced in the scented air. Carter sat on the back porch, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. He wore jeans and a simple shirt, an informal wardrobe he had adopted in recent months, so different from the Italian suits he once wore even on Sundays. His phone, once an extension of his hand really, was forgotten in his pocket, muted. He watched Lily running around the yard, occasionally stopping to examine a flower or chase a particularly fascinating butterfly. Her hair, tied in the usual crooked braids Daniel tried to perfect every day, shone under the morning sun. Daniel approached, drying his hands on a small towel. He wore that calm smile on his sun-browned face. Months in the new house had eased the worry lines around his eyes. "She's never had so much space to run," he said, observing his daughter. At the old place, the yard was barely the size of a postage stamp. Carter nodded, not taking his eyes off Lily. "She seems happy." "She is. I've never seen her so radiant." Daniel sat in the chair next to him. "Did you know she started writing stories?" Carter turned to him with interest. "Stories? About magical flowers," Daniel said. "Flowers that heal sad hearts, that help people find themselves again." He paused. "Her teacher called me yesterday to talk about it. She said they're surprisingly sophisticated for a child her age." Carter smiled, warmth filling his chest. "She inherited Elena's artistic talent. And her grandfather's sharp mind," Daniel added quietly. It was the first time Daniel had openly acknowledged a connection between Carter and Lily. The simple but meaningful remark hung between them like a final offer of peace. In the month since the move, the two men had developed a cautious relationship, slowly evolving into something like friendship. "She told me yesterday she wants her stories bound like a real book," Daniel continued. "She said she wants to give it to you." Carter felt a lump in his throat. "I'd love that. She's illustrating them too. Flowers with faces, trees that hug people." Daniel smiled. "I asked where she gets her ideas and she said, 'From inside my heart, Dad, you just have to listen, and it tells you stories.'" Lily noticed them talking and ran over, braids bouncing, cheeks flushed from running. "Grandpa, come see. There's a bird's nest in the big tree." Carter rose, setting his coffee mug aside. "Show me." Lily grabbed his hand, pulling him across the yard, skipping with excitement. Daniel stayed on the porch, watching them with a smile. Carter let her lead him, marveling at the boundless energy of the child. As they walked, he thought about how much his life had changed these past few months. The corporate empire he'd built still existed, but it now functioned largely without him. He had delegated responsibilities, gradually stepping back. The business world, once his sole purpose, now felt distant and much less important. His world had changed, and so had he. Evening was falling when Carter parked in front of the house. It had been a busy day, a quick stop at the office in the morning, followed by a visit to the best children's shoe store in town. Now, a small wrapped box rested on the passenger seat, carefully chosen with the clerk's help. As he climbed the steps, he reflected on how this house had become more of a home for him than his own luxury apartment. These days, he spent more nights in the guest room here than in his high-rise condo overlooking the park. Lily opened the door before he could ring the bell. Her smile revealed the recent loss of 2 front teeth, giving her an even more endearing look. "Grandpa," she exclaimed, throwing herself into his arms with their usual greeting. Carter lifted her up, spinning her once before setting her down. These physical gestures of affection, once so unfamiliar, now felt natural. "I brought you something," he said, offering the wrapped package. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "What is it? Open it and see." With eager fingers, Lily tore the colorful wrapping. Inside, she found a pair of delicate pink ballet slippers. "Ballet shoes!" she cried, jumping for joy. "Like real ballerinas wear." "Daniel mentioned you wanted to try ballet lessons," Carter explained. "I thought you'd need the right equipment. I'm going to try them on right now. And then I'll show you the drawing I made today. I used sparkly glue and everything." Lily dashed off to her room with the shoes, hollering for Daniel to come see her new treasure. Carter stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. The house smelled invitingly of freshly baked bread and cinnamon. In the kitchen, Daniel was preparing dinner. "She loved the gift," Carter noted. Daniel smiled. "You're spoiling her." "That's what grandfathers are for, right?" Carter retorted, stepping over to help set the table, a new habit he'd picked up. Lily soon returned, now wearing the ballet slippers, twirling clumsily around the living room. "Look, Dad, I'm going to be a famous ballerina." "The best in the world," Daniel agreed solemnly. "Grandpa, come see my drawing. It's drying on the table." Lily took his hand and led him to a small activity table in the corner of the living room. The floor around it was littered with papers, colored pencils, and cutouts, evidence of a productive afternoon. At the center was a large sheet, still damp with glitter glue. Carter sat on the floor beside her, ignoring the slight protest from his knees. Lily carefully placed the picture in his hands. "It's us," she explained, pointing to 3 figures beneath a big tree. In the center, among them, was a sparkly red heart. Above, floating among clouds, was a 4th figure with long hair and a radiant smile. "That's Mom up in heaven," Lily went on. "She sees me, you know." Carter felt a solitary tear slip down his cheek before he could hold it back. But it wasn't purely sorrow, something more layered, richer, a mix of longing, gratitude, and love. "She sees you, yes," he whispered, wiping the tear away with the back of his hand. "And she's very proud." "I like it when you cry, Grandpa," Lily commented, surprising him. "You do? Why?" "Because it shows you have feelings. Dad says real men aren't afraid to cry." Carter looked at Daniel, who had stopped in the doorway to watch them. Their eyes met. Understanding, respect, maybe even affection. "Your dad is a very wise man," Carter said to Lily, though he was looking at Daniel. Dinner was a happy meal, with Lily dominating the conversation, spinning elaborate tales about her future ballet classmates and the performances she'd put on. Carter and Daniel exchanged amused glances over her head, united by their shared love for this little dreamer. When bedtime arrived, Lily asked Carter to read her bedtime story. It was a relatively new ritual. On the nights Carter visited for dinner, he would help put Lily to bed with a story. "Which one tonight?" he asked, watching her carefully select from the books on the shelf. "This one," she decided, handing him a worn copy. "It's the one Mom liked to read to me the most." Carter looked at the cover, The Girl and the Secret Garden. The title stirred a distant memory. Elena had loved that book as a child. Could it be the same copy? The yellowed pages and worn edges suggested so. They settled on the bed, Lily snuggling against his shoulder. Carter opened the book and began reading, his voice low and steady as it filled the room with words about hidden gardens and children discovering nature's secrets. In the margins of some pages, he spotted small handwritten notes, the unmistakable handwriting of Elena. Tiny remarks, doodles of flowers, hearts marking passages she particularly loved. It was as if she were in the room, reading along with them. On one page, a note especially caught his eye. "For Lily someday, the most beautiful gardens grow out of love, even when everything seems dead." The date was just 1 month before Elena passed. Carter's voice caught at times, thick with emotion, but he pressed on. By the end of the chapter, Lily was asleep, breathing softly, still clutching his hand. Closing the book gently, Carter looked at his sleeping granddaughter, so innocent, so trusting, and felt a profound wave of love wash over him. "You saved me, Lily," he whispered, knowing she couldn't hear. "You gave me back what I thought I'd lost." He carefully slipped his hand free, resting her tiny fingers on the blanket. In a gesture that still felt new but more natural each time, he leaned in and kissed her forehead. Daniel was waiting in the hallway. "She fell asleep fast tonight. Must have been all that ballet practice." That book, it was Eleanor's, Carter asked quietly as they walked away from Lily's room. Daniel nodded. One of the few things she brought when she left home. She said you'd given it to her for her 10th birthday. Carter paused, stunned. He hadn't remembered. How many other important memories had he lost or buried? Don't blame yourself, Daniel said, reading Carter's expression. Elena kept all the good memories. She told Lily about them. Stay for breakfast tomorrow, Daniel suggested, changing the subject. Lily wants to make pancakes with me. She loves it when you're here in the morning. Dawn came with a golden light that filled the kitchen. Carter, who had slept in the guest room, woke to the sounds of laughter and clanging pans. He found Lily and Daniel in the kitchen, both wearing aprons, their faces dusted with flour. Grandpa, we're making smiley-face pancakes, Lily announced, showing off her creation. A pancake with blueberry eyes and a banana grin. The three of them sat down to eat, their lively chatter filling the kitchen. Daniel shared funny stories about odd clients he'd worked for. Lily described her elaborate plans for her next art project. Carter soaked it all in with deep contentment, taking part in the conversation with an ease he'd never thought possible. This new routine, so different from his solitary breakfasts with the Wall Street Journal, had quickly become his favorite part of the day. For the first time in his adult life, Carter allowed business appointments to take second place. He chose to be truly present in someone else's life. Did you know I'm selling the company? He remarked casually, between bites of pancake. Daniel looked at him in surprise. Selling? Why? There are other things more important now, Carter answered simply, his gaze drifting to Lily, who was absorbed in building the perfect pancake tower. Daniel followed his look and nodded, understanding without more words. The following Saturday, under a flawless blue sky, the three of them went to the city's Central Park. Carter had bought Lily a butterfly-shaped kite, determined to teach her how to fly it. The park was crowded with families enjoying the good weather. Lily walked between the two men, holding one hand of each, occasionally skipping over sidewalk cracks like it was a game. They found an open spot perfect for kite flying. As it turned out, Daniel was surprisingly skilled, guiding Lily with patient instructions on how to hold the spool and sense the wind. Carter watched, admiring Daniel's natural knack for fatherhood, something Carter himself had never learned when he had the chance with Elena. Your turn, Grandpa, Lily called, extending the kite spool toward him. Taking it, his awkward fingers almost let the line slip, causing the kite to dip dangerously before recovering. Lily giggled, but not meanly. It was laughter of pure, shared joy. Like this, she instructed, putting her little hands over his to show him the proper tension. Feel the wind, and surprisingly he did. Not just the physical breeze keeping the brightly colored butterfly dancing against the blue sky, but something deeper, the flow of life, the bond between generations, the ebb and flow of loss and discovery. An elderly woman passed by, smiling at Lily skipping between the two men, now chasing the kite's shadow on the grass. What a lovely family you have, she said to Carter. Years ago he would have corrected her, explained the complexities of the situation. Now he simply smiled. Yes, they're my family. As afternoon wore on and the sun began its descent, they made their way back to the car. Lily, tired but happy, walked between them, firmly holding Carter's and Daniel's hands. We need a photo, she declared suddenly, to put on the living room wall with the others. Daniel agreed, pulling out his phone. A passerby offered to take the picture. The three of them posed together, Lily in the middle, grinning widely despite her missing teeth, Carter and Daniel on either side. Now we're officially a family, Lily proclaimed afterward, because we have a picture all together. The simplicity of a child's logic touched Carter deeply. A photo, tangible proof of belonging, of connection, something Elena never had with him in those final years. He looked at Lily, this small miracle who had come into his life unexpectedly yet precisely when he needed her most. He looked at Daniel, a man who might have been his rival, but who had generously become his partner in raising this extraordinary child. The grief he carried so long, for losing Elena, for the years they'd been apart, had not vanished. It never would. But it had turned into something else, something that could coexist with hope and happiness. It had made room for life, a life full of color, purpose, and love. A life with deep, sturdy roots, planted not only in a flourishing garden, but in Carter's own heart. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.